Heaven's Gate Mountain Run. 19 miles, 7,600 feet of elevation gain. You could even tack on a bit more, both miles and a lot of vert, if you take a wrong turn. We'll get to that. So just 2 weeks earlier, I ran the Race to Roby Creek, a road to trail or road to dirt half marathon here in town. Check out my race recap video on that one if you're interested. I figured it'd be good to put this video out right away after that one, just to kind of, you know, show the two races back to back. I won't talk about so much training in this video because I only had literally 14 days in between these two races. Not much time to really get back into training. It was more about kind of recovery, feeling fresh for this race, maybe a little bit of sharpening 7 days out. So in this video, I'm gonna cover running those races back to back, close succession, how I feel it went, of course. Definitely talk about the race dynamics itself again. I ran the same exact course, again, with a wrong turn involved this year, but I'll compare year over year from last year to this year. If you watch my Race to Roby Creek recap, or even just looked at the thumbnail, you'll see that I dropped a good amount of time from last year's race, 4 minutes in fact. And I think some of the training I've been doing definitely played a part in that, and a lot of that also carried into this race as well. But with that race being really more of a road style event, despite the elevation in the dirt, there's definitely some key differences that affected how I raced in this more mountainous race. Aspects of my training, some worked, some did carry over, and some didn't. So I will get into that. But let's first go blow by blow through the race itself. Starting from the beginning and even going back to prior years where I ran this race. There's a pretty decent lead in up to the first cabin where you turn and get into the serious climbing. It's kind of along a river, rocky, undulating, net up, of course. Definitely running the whole time, no poles, none of the extreme grades that you'll hit later on in the course. In prior years, I had this odd mentality that I knew my climbing legs weren't as good as the other runners in the race, so I would try to run that section faster, even though it's at the beginning of the race with my weaker climbing sections upcoming. Now, I don't know why I was thinking that. This was even last year too. So I went into this one with a different mindset. I knew I had struggled a lot last year. I mean, from the moment the trail got steep. I mean, this is kind of an early season race. I typically don't really do that kind of steep training this early in the season. Last year, I went into the race without actually ever using my poles. This year I've been testing some Compradel poles, also some packs and quivers. So I've been using my poles a little more, but not to the level that I would really need to for a race like this. That being said, my plan for the first section was to just hang in there, hang back, go with whoever's going up front, and save myself for the climbs, try to reserve myself really, and not get too anxious in that early section. And honestly, that was kind of playing itself out. It felt like very relaxed for me, very easy. There was 3 runners ahead of me. The guy that eventually won, Zach Garner, Mac Moss, who ran last year, another runner who I don't know. So I was just comfortably kind of sitting in 4th, but honestly, I was so antsy. It felt really slow. It felt really easy. And I was kind of itching to go, but I was like, okay, this one time, I'm gonna be smart. So we were just kind of cruising along there, and then Zach took off. He was running right in front of me in 3rd, and he just hopped off the trail, took a step and ran past, and just put a little move on. About 35 minutes in, I was kind of like, okay, that's fine. Mac had told me, he knows him, that he's a Norda Pro athlete, which I had no idea before the race. He holds the course record for the Bear 100 actually. So it tells you the caliber of athlete he is. I just kind of still sat in the pack and I figured, let's see how it feels. Mac he was in second and he didn't try to chase. So I just kind of keyed off of him because I knew the previous year, he just crushed me up the climb. As soon as we got to the climb, my legs started cramping. He lives in McCall. He's training this terrain a lot more. It's kind of like his home turf. So I kind of let it go for a little while, and then towards the end of that first section there, I said, okay, Mac, let me take the lead. I'll just pull a little bit. Don't let the gap get too big. So around 45 minutes, I was actually looking at my watch. I was like, okay, let's give it 10 minutes, make sure I'm still feeling okay, and then try to at least pick it up a little. So I picked it up slightly, but really didn't try to close down the gap too much. It was kind of like winding around. So at times I did see Zach not too far ahead. So I knew it wasn't like he completely escaped. I was kind of surprised when I hit the cabin a little over 107, because the previous year I had run over 111 to the cabin, same exact route. And I was, again, like Roby, I didn't have the exact kind of time. I thought it was around 110. I had looked at it, but I didn't really note it down. So I ended up being 4 minutes faster than the previous year while thinking I was running much easier. So past the cabin, filled up water at one of the creeks there, and then proceeded to go for the big climb up to the Cannonball summit. And that is kind of really where I shocked myself. I mean, across the board, that first section, the climb up to Cannonball, and even later on, the climb after Blue Gulch, my times across the board were faster by a lot for the climbing. I was honestly surprised that Mac didn't come charging by me on the climb. I mean, just based on last year and knowing how strong he is and my perception of myself being weaker on the climbing, I was just surprised, honestly, that I was able to beat him to the top of Cannonball Mountain. I did have Zach in my sights most of the way up, aside from, peeking out a couple times over the top of fall summits or whatever. But it's, it's hard to gauge the time because, the gap compresses when you're going up those kind of grades and moving that slow. We're talking like big sections, 30% grade, 40% grade for like quarter of a mile, third of a mile, just a massive climb. So I summited Cannonball, and that's where things started to go a little bit funny for me. There's some snowfields up on top, and I just really had trouble with the snowfields. I took 2 or 3 complete headers, just like post holing, going over the top. On the way down there, may not be in the first section, but somewhere on that descent off of Cannonball, Mac just glided by me, and that was on top of a snowfield where I was just like sinking in and just really clunking around there, and he just kind of like glided over the top and really went by me pretty quick. I was like, how are you doing this? And I don't know if he told me right then or afterwards, he's like, I live here, like I've been doing this, running in this kind of snow all the time. So the rest of the way, he's just descending, like he was just moving. The first descent I handled okay, although it's interesting, my time was about, I think, a couple minutes slower going down, even though, I had gained a lot of time going up, but going down was slower. So he kind of got me there. And then there's kind of like a long descent heading to the Blue Gulch aid station, and I was told Mac just came through a minute earlier. Zach had gone through 4 minutes earlier, so pretty close to those guys. I mean, I think just looking at that video that I got from the drone footage, I was about 30 seconds ahead of Mac, up to the top there. So he had definitely gained a minute 30 on me from the top to the next aid station. You know, that's understandable, I think. Really good descender, especially in that steep terrain. So shortly after Blue Gulch, this is where I had a major screw up. I ran off course. And see the picture here, there's some pink ribbons going off trail to the left. That was where I was supposed to go, and I went straight. 100% my fault. Say this right now. When you run off course, outside of vandalism of course markings or anything like that, it's always your fault. This is not the first time. This is the worst time I've run off course, but it's not the first time. It just takes a lapse of concentration for a moment, and then boom, you miss something, and then you're off. There were a few factors that went into this. Again, no excuses here. Before the race, Jeremy had said he had adjusted a section of the end of the course, shortened it by about a half mile, something about rattlesnakes or something, and you know, trying to avoid them because they were kind of waking up. I'm not 100% familiar with the area, but I had the GPX course on my watch. I honestly, I don't remember running past those flags, but at a certain point I remember looking at my watch and being like, oh, I'm not on the track here. But somewhere along the line, I'm not supposed to be on the track, so I guess I'm okay. So I kept going. And then after I missed that turn, you can see in the picture, another factor is I was on the main trail, and it was just, I distinctly remember kind of seeing all those flowers there and just being like, wow, this is so nice. And I really think I was just kind of like following that tunnel of flowers and completely spaced and missed those flags off to the left, which was, you know, diverging from the main trail. And on top of that, the trail that I continued on did lead into a portion of the 15-mile course, which was also marked with pink flags. But that section of the course was an outbound section only. No one was supposed to be running down that section. It was like very shortly after, you know, in trail races, if you're on a trail, you know, and it's a, you know, obvious trail, you can often go quite a while before needing to flag it. So it really wasn't that long, and I saw the pink flags again. So I started following them and thinking that, okay, I'm off the GPX, that's fine. I'm on flags, I'm good. And then I also passed another runner who was running in the same direction as me. So I thought, okay, well, because I know the 15 mile starts later, and I know I'll probably like run through some people. So it was close to the end, and I passed him. I'm like, okay, I'm good. But then I did find it weird. I didn't see Mac ahead. I would think it was kind of more wide open going down to the finish, and I didn't spot him ahead at all. And I thought I would be close enough to see him. So that gave me a kind of uneasy feeling, I would say. I saw the finish approaching pretty quickly. So I was coming up to like, I guess 17 miles by the end, and I'm like, this is too short, like something is wrong. But I didn't know what. And then when I came down to that last little filter out into the parking lot, I saw some flags coming down from the opposite side of the parking lot. And then I was like, okay, I did something wrong. And I kind of like walked to the finish so as not to draw attention and have people cheer or whatever, thinking I had finished. So I was like, I think I went the wrong way, blah, blah, blah. And yeah, that was pretty much that. So once I got back across the finish line, erroneously, talked it through with Jeremy, the RD, and he was like, oh, I know where you messed up. Like, I know the exact section. And I was like, okay, I screwed up, I'm done. And then he came to me like a minute later and was like, okay, so you want to go back out there and finish up? I was like, what? It kind of caught me off guard because I was just assuming, all right, I screwed up, DNF. He's like, no, you just run back up where you came. You'll have to cut across the grass up that ridge there. You know, it'll be like 2,000 more feet, and then you'll run into the trail, and then you just finish up. It'll be 4 more miles. Yeah, so that's what I did. I ran back and added about, I think, 2,500 more feet after coming down. Obviously, my race was short, so I came down an even steeper descent, and my downhill legs were not feeling that good at all. So I went back up, came back down. I actually ran into a friend of mine who was finishing his race, and we kind of like tag teamed the rest of the way through, which was fun. So got to chat and kind of just hang out, enjoy the rest of the day. So these things happen, you know. I was running in about third when this happened, and I ended up in 11th, you know, after crossing the finish line, going back out, and then finishing for a second time, or, you know, whatever, the only time, the correct time, I don't know. But it was fun. I was overall extremely happy with how things went. I mean, aside from that fact, running off course and having such a major screw up, I felt like it was my strongest race by far out of the 3 times I've been there. So in the end, that's really all that counts. Continuing my testing of the VJ Ultra 3 here. It's a little warm, so hitting some puddles to kind of cool off. So I'll just go through my gear before I take a little stop here, talk through the rest of the race and training and all that. I ran in the North Face Vectiv Sky 2. Before the race, I had filmed my test video for the Prodigio Pro versus Tecton X3. Check that out for sure. And I had some apprehension about the Sky 2 because the Prodigio Pro feels so good. The cushioning, I know I'd be heading downhill a lot. I was wondering if maybe I should run in the La Sportiva. But ultimately I thought it was just too steep. Like, I really felt good about the Sky 2. It just feels so good around the midfoot, the foothold, and the spaciousness in the toe box. I do have it in a US 10, half size up, and it just feels so locked in. Like, my foot doesn't move or slide forward at all. And I thought that would be like the main factor for this race. So overall, they were great. When I'm running kind of around here, kind of lower in the foothills, stuff like this, I feel like I could kind of feel the carbon fiber plate. It feels a little firm. I feel like I could feel the carbon fiber plate. It feels a little firm, but in that kind of like steep up and downs, I gotta say it was 5 hours in total, 22 miles, and I did not feel it at all in terms of feeling hard or harsh underfoot. It was just an excellent shoe for that race, that type of really rugged mountain terrain. I'm talking, you know, I went 40% up and at times 30-40% down, probably even steeper. A couple of quick things. I did add a Gaiter. The one thing about that shoe is I feel like the collar, there's these big bolsters on the inside of the ankle and around the heel, but it pushes the collar out a little bit, so there's a gap there. So I definitely went with a light Gaiter, my normal thin Ultra one, and that kept everything out. I was really surprised. I mean, that shoe has a pretty open mesh along the sides of the foot and over the top of the toe box. So I thought, even with the Gaiter, that I'd get a lot of stuff in, and after, it was completely clean. So I was very, very impressed with that. And speaking of the ankle collar, I do feel like it has a bit of a ridge to it. It's a little firm. And I noticed that on the left-hand collar of my ankle, the left outside. A lot of the course, there's a lot of side hilling, especially in the final descent where it's sloping off to the right. So I got a picture here. You can see your foot kind of leans off this way with the slope of the trail, being that a lot of it is really not smooth, flat trail. It's kind of like off camber, dug into the side of a pretty steep mountain. So the collar kind of hits that ankle bone on the left side. And I felt that, not in this shoe, but I felt it right here in the Sky 2, definitely. But I didn't feel it on this side and not at all in the right foot. So I think I ran the VJ Spark the first time I ran Heaven's Gate, and I got the same kind of a thing. The left outside of my foot, the collar was kind of like jabbing me in the ankle bone. Maybe I just have a more prominent ankle bone, and it definitely has to do with the orientation of the trail sloping out like that. But that's one thing. I don't want to hack it off. I'm not opposed to hacking off an ankle collar in a shoe if I need to. I think it's very specific to that course, so I don't want to do it just yet. If I know I would run a course that was like that, and if I somehow knew in advance my one or the other foot would be kind of tilted like that for a lot of the way, I might think about slicing that ankle collar down with a razor knife. You know, I've done it before, but I'm not going to do it unless I need to, because it's really not an issue when the terrain is level or even twisty or turny. It's really just that continual side hilling. So other gear, I ran with the Instinct Evolution 7-liter pack, but I did hook up the Solomon custom quiver to it. I hadn't run enough with the single quivers, and I wasn't just like super comfortable with those. I talked about those bungees kind of having extra floppy material around. I wasn't comfortable going into a race with it. I know I've used the Solomon one for years, and I like how I could adjust the poles and really snug them down with that single kind of toggle in the back. So I was just more comfortable with that one. I hooked up those little bra clips there to the shoulder, no problem. I went with my Lecky super light poles, not the Comprador ones. The Comprador ones that I just reviewed, they're a little bit heavier. I feel like that's more of a training pole. I like the self-deploying feature, but in this race, given that they were such long extended climbs, it was really a matter of just deploying them probably 3, 4, I don't know, maybe 5 times. Like, not like some courses go up and down and you're constantly kind of taking the poles in and out and opening and closing them. This one's not like that. Just had to do it a few times. So the factor of having them pop open was not so big in this race. And also it was so steep and short. I just wanted to have the light ones. The super light are way thinner, way, surely less durable, but that's what they're made for, a racing scenario. So I did use my Lecky super lights for this one. Let's look at fueling and hydration. I used the 27-liter Blottle in the center, and I started with 2 of the other soft flasks up front filled with mix. The other one, mix and fluid scratch hydration mix, similar to this, but I had it more in the back. So that's 27 ounces. I tried to get through that up to the cabin, which was the first hour 7. Bunch of SIS beta gels, which I have right here. I think I ate 5 or 6 of those. I can't remember if I had the 6th one. Definitely at least 5. I filled up, I had 1 scratch mix pack. I had 1 pH 1500 pack, which I didn't take until my second loop, my second finish loop. The carbs in total, if I did take 5, it would have been 106 grams per hour. If I did take 6, it would have been 118 grams. And that includes the gels, the fluids, all that stuff. Sodium, 1090 per hour. That's a little low. I was doing the regular scratch mix. I had mixed in a 1500 pack into those 2 flasks, and my beginning 27 liter, I had kind of split up a 1500 precision hydration salt pack there. So I was trying to boost my salt, but I forgot to bring my salt pills. It wasn't an issue because I finished the first loop in 3.5 hours or so, and then the second loop was just kind of like finishing out. I was hiking, kind of taking it easy. So for 3.5 hours, the sodium didn't really hit me, but in my later races, I definitely want to up that. I want to get to around 1500 because I know that's my sodium rate at high effort. So 1090 milligrams of sodium per hour, 22.5 ounces. I counted my fill-ups. It was kind of easy. The race was short. So 22.5 ounces. That's, for me, historically high. Using the H-drop sensor, I know that I just have to drink more, especially at high effort. It's like I was always drinking less than that and never really had a idea or sense of why. With that product, I know that I really should be drinking more, and I have been doing it, and in conjunction with the higher sodium, it's really been absorbing better. Like I'm really feel like I'm matching what I'm sweating out and what I need to replace. So that's been going well. So fueling and hydration, not a huge factor. This was a shorter race. That went well. Just take a quick look at the numbers here from the cabin. I was 4 minutes faster to the cabin in that first section. To the top of Cannonball, last year I was 2:13 and 2:04 this year. So like my climbing, kind of the training that I talked about in my previous Race to Roby Creek video, I think the focus on fitness, the focus on speed, the focus on doing those hill intervals and doing a lot of that at incline, you know, like doing the kind of extra vert at 20% here and there, hill intervals, and even my short interval stacks, I'm doing those at 3 and 4%. One of the reasons is I feel a little squirrely on a treadmill. Once I get to 10 miles per hour on a treadmill, I have like a Nordic track. It's a commercial one. It's not like a wimpy one, but once I get to 10 miles per hour, it feels crazy to me. I feel like it's just way too fast to be moving in one place. So I'd rather kind of inch up the incline. So I was doing those short interval stacks, even though they're kind of speed oriented. If you put it at 3 or 4%, it does up the power a bit. I think all of the kind of fitness, kind of climbing training that I talked about in my previous video did apply to this race, because I got to the top of that mountain, which is essentially the whole climb of the race. That's 9 minutes faster from last year to this year. Same course, same conditions. It was a touch hotter this year, but in terms of snow coverage and all that, it was essentially the same. And I was just way faster this year. Like I said, the descending, I was 27:02 last year, just shy of 30 minutes this year. So actually 3 minutes slower on the first big descent. Getting down to Blue Gulch Creek, there's probably a little more rollers there. I was 2:40 last year and 2:34 this year, so 6 minutes faster. And then after that, I ran off course. I don't have reliable kind of splits there for comparison. So my descending, I talked about in my Race to Roby Creek video how I had done some fast, hard downhills, and that helped my downhill legs in that race. But I think one of the main takeaways from this race is that downhill in that type of race, say 6%, 8% even, maybe in that race, you know, that's pretty fast if you're thinking of like a regular road marathon. That's pretty steep, I should say, if you're thinking of like a regular road marathon, running like 5 miles down a descent at like 8%. That's kind of extreme in that sense. But in terms of this race, this mountain race, it's really not. Like we're talking 20, 30, 40% descents. And that is not something I have covered. That's not something I talked about in my Race to Roby Creek video. I have not been getting that type of descent work. One of my main takeaways in terms of training and specific race preparation, the climbing is really fitness and aerobic based. So if you're getting fit, you're getting fast, you know, you're working on your power, your climbing is you don't maybe necessarily, you have to get in some steep climbing, but a lot of that is going to be aerobic and a lot of that is going to be power based. And you could kind of work on that more easily than the descending. Throwing in at the end of those hill intervals, throwing in like very fast, hard bombing descents on the road, that's still a relatively modest grade compared to what I encountered in this mountain race, running down the side of a mountain and not a road. That is drastically different. That is not something you could really train unless you're really hitting those type of steep descents. For me, the main takeaway, I mean, that was pretty much it. Like I'm happy with my fitness. I'm happy with everything that I've been doing in terms of getting fit, getting fast, building my power, climbing. My climbing is, you know, objectively better. I mean, the times are better across the board. I raced 4 minutes faster in that half marathon, but the mountain descending, my legs were feeling it. You know, I was slower this year. I know Mac ran by me, and if I would have ran the correct descent, he probably would have gained another couple minutes on me down to the finish line, because even then I was kind of like a little bit stilted going down. And then I had to go back, of course, and do it again, which was not fun at all. So I have a couple of 100 Ks coming up, June, July. I think I'm about 6 weeks out from the first one, and then a month to the following one. That will be River of No Return out in Chalice, Idaho, and Beaverhead out in Salmon on the Continental Divide between Idaho and Montana. I am going to really need to focus on my steep, technical downhill descending. I mean, that is really going to be a factor in like keeping my legs in one piece for both of those races and even one of those races, when you're running down those steep descents, if you're just stilted like that, you're just bleeding time. I mean, it's not a question of running fast down there. It's just a question of keeping your legs turning over, and really, you know, when you're just stilted, then you have to sit back. You're going even slower, and then when you're sitting back, you're hurting your muscles, your eccentric contraction even more than if you're leaning forward and just flowing through. But if you don't have that time in that type of terrain to build up the muscles on that steep of a terrain, it's just not going to work out. So basically, in terms of my training, I like where I'm at. I like where my fitness is at. I like what I'm doing. Of course, 100K is different than 19 miles. I'm going to have to pump up the volume a little bit. I talked about how I did that half marathon with, you know, 56 miles per week leading in. It's summertime. You can see it's beautiful. Longer days, more time. Track season's over, the coaching's over until the fall. I should be able to up the volume now that I feel like I have a good fitness base, and also work in that downhill training. Really got to get hard on the legs in the 5 to 6 week leading into the race, and then we'll see how it goes. I'll see if what I do and what I figure out can work out, and then I'll report back. Well, time to head on back home. The legs are still feeling pretty beat from that race. The quads kind of ran up and down, and I'm gonna have to run down the road. This is not gonna feel great, but I'm gonna need to find even steeper descents if I'm gonna get my legs right for those 100Ks I got coming up. So again, thank you for watching. Thank you for tuning in to Humble Running. If you enjoy these types of videos, the race recaps, discussion about training, what I've got going on in my calendar, the shoes and gear and stuff that I am actually racing in, let me know down in the comments. I appreciate you tuning in and following the channel. If you'd like to support, again, I've got some affiliate links down in the description below. Check out the support page on my Humble Running Community Substack page. I've got some general links. I also throw up some kind of featured products. I threw the Vectiv Sky 2 there in at REI. If there's products that I test and run and race, talk about, discuss, that you'd like to try out and you appreciate maybe me helping you make the decisions, you just click through those links. Helps me out a little bit. Again, thank you for watching and have a great day out on the trails. Like this right now, this is kind of uncomfortable running downhill on my quads just a few days after the race, but going forward, I'm gonna need to find some descents that are a lot steeper than this.